Okay, I know the title of this video seems like hyperbole, but I genuinely believe that the X100VI is changing photography, but I don't necessarily mean that this specific camera is changing photography. I mean that what this camera represents in the genre of photography that it's created. Thus, this is not going to be a traditional review of the camera. There's already a ton of those you can go find on YouTube. But I am going to talk about my experience over the last couple months using this camera. I have a ton of straight out of camera images to show you throughout this video that you've probably already seen to start off with, which is not normal for me. Normally, I'm very much a take the images in RAW, edit them, and then present them to you. And that's been a new experience for me. And that's the thing. This camera is changing relationships we're having with our cameras. It's changing relationships we have with photography. And my experience with this camera has been completely different than any other camera I've used. And I think it's really important for photography as a whole, for everyone ranging from beginner to hobbyist, to even someone like me who is a professional who works on stuff all the time. Let's get into it.
I've been dreaming of a
So if you're new to this channel, I'm primarily a landscape photographer. That's why I'm in this sea of aspen trees here for the fall color change in Colorado. And that also means that I typically shoot in RAW. Well, not typically, I always shoot in RAW. For my entire career of landscape photography, I've always shot my images with the intention that they're gonna look kind of crappy out of camera, and then I'm gonna take them into an editing suite and make them look okay. That's what a RAW image is for. More data, all the things that I wanna do in post-processing. So when the X100V, this one's older brother, completely sold out and people were buying it at double the price of MSRP and you could never find one for 4 years of it being manufactured, I didn't really understand it. It's a fixed lens with a camera sensor that's only 26 megapixels and it doesn't take images that I couldn't take on my R7 or my R5 or, you know, sometimes even my phone. So why was everyone buying this camera? I really didn't understand it. And the answer is experience. It's your relationship with photography. It's the experience of shooting your photos. No, it cannot do all of the things that my R5 can do. No, it cannot do some of the things that even my phone could do. But what it can do is provide an experience with the subject matter in the photography that I'm taking. I realized that the last 5 years, image quality hasn't really gotten better. It hasn't really changed. We've just been doing things to change AI or autofocus or anything like that. And it doesn't matter what you buy anymore. Every camera you can buy, even your phone, is going to take good images. So now it's a question of, well, what else do you want? What more do you want than good images? And for this camera, and what this camera represents, it's the experience of shooting photography. And while I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be this exact camera. It doesn't have to be the X100 line. It could literally be film cameras. I think that this camera represents a completely new genre or mindset behind photography. You have this gap between high-end phones and professional cameras that was completely unfilled for the longest time. That somewhere in between of people that might want something for a hobby, something that they don't have to edit, something that they just want to walk around with, that's better than their phone. Maybe not the image quality at the end of the day, but the experience of shooting photos is way better on this than on the phone. And that's what this whole video is about, is that it's about experience. It's not about the end images. It's more about being able to take the images because you have the camera with you, or the experience you're having with whatever you're photographing is way better on this camera than any other camera I've used.
Summer nights and big brides, talking to your best friend, company you can't pretend. You're not alone in this. Look at all your neighbors. No one is a stranger. No one is a stranger. I belong to kingdom come. You are from the other. Blessed is with your grace.
So you might be wondering how I ended up with this camera if I already have multiple cameras that technically take better images than this one, or why I would justify the cost. Well, the truth is, it's actually Sophia's camera, but she is the inspiration for making this video. Over the last several years, I have tried to get better at or allow myself to just walk around and take images that have no expectations, that aren't meant for my portfolio, that are just for fun, things that I just take to reconnect with my photography. Because the truth is, I've kind of disconnected with a lot of my photography. My association with a lot of my cameras is that they're work related and that I don't want to pick them up if I'm not in the mood. And even though I've attempted to walk around with my R7 and a Sigma to 18-35 to just try to take images sometimes without any expectations, it's still a pretty heavy setup. It's not a setup that I was reaching for very often because even though I can walk around with it, it wasn't that enjoyable to use. And to top it all off, I still had to edit those images. I was still shooting in RAW, and there were images that I had to put onto Lightroom, edit them, cull through them, and all of that stuff. And it just didn't have a great experience with me when I was just trying to shoot things not for work. So when Sophia asked about getting a camera that'd be a little bit better than her phone in terms of experience, but she wasn't really interested in editing all the images, she just wanted to take fun travel photos on a phone and the images be pleasant straight out of camera, I knew the X100 line was probably her best bet. However, they're impossible to get, whether it's the X100V or now the X100VI, even to today. 8 months past when this got released, people that pre-ordered it still don't have their cameras. And the only reason we ended up getting one was serendipity. Within 12 hours of us deciding we wanted the camera, we had bought the camera at MSRP. It's a long story, but to me that just said, this camera found us. It was meant to be. And it's really made me reconnect with my photography. Over the last 16 days, I drove from Ontario to Colorado, and it's been such a joy to use. It's so different in experience with my work cameras. I don't associate it with work. I just take it out and shoot whatever I want, and I don't have to do anything with the images. They're all just straight out of camera using film emulations or film recipes, and overall the experience has been almost therapeutic. It's almost reconnected me a bit with my photography because the camera is here for experience. It's not for the end results, even though it creates some really nice images. And I think that's a great transition to talk about all of the things that I've loved about using the camera and why I think the experience of using it is important for all types of photographers. Whether you're a hobbyist or you're someone like Sophia who wants to just travel and take good photos, or you're a professional like me that just wants a camera that might not be for work, it might just be for you. Before I dive into what I love about the X100VI, I'd like to take a second to thank today's sponsor of this video, FlexiSpot. If you're like me and spend most of your time sitting at a computer, you likely suffer from things like back pain, posture issues, and overall fatigue while either working or editing your photos. Before living on the road, I use a standing desk every single day. It's one of the things I miss the most from my office and cannot recommend them enough. FlexiSpot sent us over the E7 standing desk. This thing is strong enough to lift Sophia. Okay, that's not saying much. It's also strong enough to lift both of us. It includes a module to set 4 different heights. For example, I've set button 1 for sitting height and button 2 for standing height. For all the times you choose to sit down, FlexiSpot also offers affordable ergonomic chairs. They sent the C5 over, which has adjustable lumbar support, is very comfy, and most important for me, adjustable armrests. FlexiSpot has recently released their C7 Pro Max series, which gives even more flexibility to adjusting your wrist comfort. Working long hours at a desk can destroy your wrists, so having the ability to adjust the desk height and the chair height allows for a much healthier posture at the desk to prevent wrist injuries. Both their C7 and C7 Pro Max also have a hidden footrest for those times you want to relax a little bit, along with more adjustments to perfect your ergonomic comfort. FlexiSpot has a ton of options for chairs that give you different sizes, material types, configurations, and features. They accomplish all of this while remaining affordable and budget-friendly based on your needs. So check out the C7 and C7 Pro Max chairs using my link in the description, and you'll get a discount on anything you order, and it also helps support this channel. If you spend a bunch of time on a computer like me, sincerely invest in yourself and get an ergonomic chair or standing desk. So when I say this camera is for everyone, I genuinely mean it, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or you're professional. There's a use case for this camera for everyone. But it doesn't have to be this exact camera. Maybe you're a professional like me and you want to get a film camera and slow down and take different style of images that you wouldn't normally shoot with your current cameras. Or you're someone like Sophia who just wants to take travel photos. It doesn't really matter what camera it is, as long as it's a camera that's meant for experience. A lot of the times I qualify that as a film camera, or this camera, or even the Ricoh GXR3 or whatever it's called. All of those cameras are about the experience of shooting photography, not necessarily the end result. And I think this camera is doing to change the industry. However, right now, instead of talking about all of those, I am going to talk about a few of my thoughts regarding exactly the X100VI, which can probably still be applied to the X100V and probably even the X100IV. So I've written down a few things here that I wanted to talk about. One of those is that I love the dual EVF. The ability to shoot with an EVF to see exactly what the recipe or the image I'm going to get is, and then being able to switch to see what's happening in real life. It gives me a chance to maybe look at the composition a little bit wider, or look at something differently, or maybe see something happening that I couldn't see through the EVF. And at the end of the day, maybe I don't use it all the time, but that rangefinder is just nice because, like right now when the camera's off, I can just look through it and get an idea of what my shot's gonna be. And that just feels really good. I miss that from my DSLR, and it's been something that you don't really get anymore on a mirrorless camera. And it's just been a joy to use, just a little added bonus. I feel like if it didn't exist, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it's just that extra thing that this camera does that most other cameras cannot. Some other things that I've already mentioned. It being light and compact means I can just walk around with it all the time. I don't have to worry about it on my shoulder. I barely even notice it, and it means I get to take more of the images of the mundane, the friends or family, the experiences, the things in between that I wouldn't normally carry around my camera for anymore. Maybe I would have done it 10 years ago, but again, I associate all my cameras with work, and as sad as it is, that enthusiasm to always have a camera with me has kind of gone away. Once again, that's a reminder of my disconnect with some of my photography recently. And by having this, it's reconnected with me with that in between. It's making me see things differently. It's making me take a camera out when I wouldn't normally take a camera out. And I think that's really wonderful. The images out of camera with the film recipes that are built into Fuji's ecosystem, plus the film recipes that users create, have been an absolute joy to use. Most of all the images that you've been seeing throughout this video, while they are straight out of camera, have been using those film recipes. Whether it's the ones that are just made by Fujifilm, or it's some of the recipes that I've installed on the X100VI that are made by users. Those have been a ton of fun to use, just experimenting with different looks, film grain, ironically making some of my image quality worse just to get a different feel for it. It's been a lot of fun to use, and it also means that when I take an image, I don't have to worry about editing it. I don't have to worry about sitting down and working on my photos, which is great for me because I don't want to. I want to just take images sometimes that I don't have to worry about. And on the plus side for someone like Sophia, it means that she can take images and change the recipe to one that she likes in that moment, take the photo, and then she's done. She doesn't have to worry about editing the images or any of that. They're just pretty great straight out of the camera. One thing I should mention is that I could have used all of those recipes on my old X-T4 that I got rid of a few years ago for video. It wouldn't have changed anything. That camera could take the same exact images. Again, it's not necessarily about this specific camera. It's about the experience of shooting photography. And I think that's what's really important when we talk about this camera. Another huge plus that I didn't realize until we got the camera was actually learning photography using this camera. Because all of the dials are tactile and there's numbers representing ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, rather than just looking on a digital screen, it actually makes learning things like the exposure triangle much easier to understand. I can show that the shutter speed goes from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 15, and that it keeps doubling on the shutter speed here. Or ISO, where it goes from 200 to 400 to 800, things like that. It's been way easier to teach aperture, ISO, and shutter speed with these physical dials. It's also been much more of a joy to use these physical dials, although I gotta admit, I've been pretty much just shooting in auto. Don't tell anyone, especially not in the comments down below. Everything's been in auto. I basically just change the aperture to what I want, and then my ISO and shutter speed just does its own thing. That's been it, because I don't want to think about it. I just want to walk around and take nice images, and all I really got to change is the aperture. Speaking of aperture, the built-in ND has been really important as well, because sometimes I want to take images with the low aperture. So I need that ND in midday light because it's just too bright. And that built-in ND, again, makes the user experience so much easier. I don't have to carry around lens filters. I don't even have a polarizer for this thing. The only accessories I bought were this piece of glass to go in the front so that I don't ever harm it, because I can just walk around and bump into things without worry. And I got the little small rig thumb grip here, and it's just made holding the camera that much better. But overall, the experience with the camera has been fantastic. There's obviously still some downfalls. I'm still not a huge fan of Fuji's menu systems, but once you get the camera set up, it's pretty good overall. You just kind of learn the cue system, change some stuff around, and you're not really digging through menus all that often as long as you have that initial setup really honed in.
When you call me up and say hello, fresh squeezed like a lemon. You're not alone in this. Look at all your neighbors. No one is a stranger. No one is a stranger. I belong to kingdom come. You are from the other. Bless us with your gracious blessing of a stranger. Dreaming of a geranium. Put my hands above.
So do you need to go out and buy this camera? No, you don't need this camera. No one needs this camera, just like no one needs a sports car. This camera just happens to be my intro and foray into what I deem photography experience, and the general idea of this entire video, which is cameras that represent our experience of shooting photography. This camera, however, has actual data to back up how much demand there is. Because its older brother is completely sold out for years, they fixed the manufacturing and they said this one should be fine, and then it's still sold out 8 months later. That to me says that this camera is probably the most popular camera that's being sold right now. And that says that there's a huge desire for it. There's a huge want and desire for photography experience. It's also why film photography has had a huge resurgence. It's not about the image quality, it's not about the final image, it's about enjoying the experience of shooting. And if you're out there wondering, just like I was, why anyone would buy a camera with a lot less features than another camera at the same price, including things like this fixed lens, well, I hope this answers that question. Actually, recently I was shooting a workshop and I was using all of my normal cameras, shooting in RAW, and all of the cameras were just so boring. The images were just too good. They're too boring. They're flat, and then I edit them and they look great, and I'm just like, I don't want these images that are on the back of the screen. And then I would take the same image with this camera and it would be far more enjoyable, and I wouldn't even ever have to touch it. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to replace any of those. Not at all. Those are still my workhorses. Those are still the cameras I'm going to use. However, what this has done is opened my eyes and reconnected myself with photography. It doesn't feel like work. It just feels like fun. And to me, that's what's really important. The experience of shooting photography with this camera. Sadly, I have to give it back to Sophia. Maybe this means I need to get my own. But anyways, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you've enjoyed. There's got to be a rainbow there somewhere. I'm actually going to end the episode with a picture that I took of a rainbow with this camera. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Later.
Standing at the wall.